The psalmist David wrote in Psalm 119 that it is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. Affliction can be good for us in a spiritual sense. In the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul is writing about this particular church and the fact that they had been founded on Christ and that he and other men such as Apollos had built upon that foundation, but that the fires of this life would try every man's work to see what type of work it was. If they had built gold, silver, or precious stones upon that foundation, that work would be purified, it would be revealed by fire. If they had laid wood, hay, and stubble, that also would be revealed as it would be burned up by fire. Every man's work shall be tried of fire of what sort of work it is. But fires, trials, if you will, have a way from this language of burning out the impurities in our lives and also purifying our lives to burn away the dross. And so we can draw closer to Christ as the fiery trials of this life burn around us. And there are things that we can learn as we suffer. Number one, when we suffer affliction in this world, we learn our own frailness, our own weakness, our inability to take thought and add a cubit to our stature. We simply lack power, and as we suffer, we realize exactly how impotent we really are. With our own frailness in mind and in view, we realize and learn our dependence on God. We are completely dependent on Him. God does cause His sun to rise upon the good and the evil. He sends rain upon the just and the unjust. Everything that we have in this world, every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness nor shadow of turning. We owe Him our lives. We owe Him the ability to live. In Him we live and move and have our being, and all the goodness in this world, every breath we take, every meal we eat is a testimony of His divine providence. And so when we suffer in the world, we realize our extreme dependence upon His providential hand. And lastly, when we suffer in this world, we do draw nigh unto Him. The Apostle Paul wrote of his sufferings in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, and he wrote about a messenger of Satan that did buffet him, a thorn in the flesh. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, 3 times, that it might depart from me. And what God says unto him is peculiar and interesting. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee. My strength is made perfect in weakness. God is not telling Paul to get over it when he says, My grace is sufficient for thee. He's telling Paul that the solution to your problem is my grace. The way that you will endure the trial is my grace. And so Paul says, Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. In our trials, we experience so richly, so strongly, so powerfully the presence and the grace of Almighty God that Paul would rather glory in his infirmities, because when he is weak in the flesh, Christ is strong in him, and he took pleasure even in his infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities and persecutions, in stress for Christ's sake. So many men of God and women of God in the Bible experience suffering. You have David on the run from Saul, who has lost his family and everything that he had as a man, chased by the king of Israel. You have Job, who lost his children, he lost his prosperity, and he even lost his health. You have Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his jealous brothers. And these men, having lost everything that they had in this world, that the world deemed valuable, realized when they only had God that that was all that they actually needed to be happy, to be whole, because the power of Christ had rested upon them. In their weakness, through His grace, they were made strong, and they realized they had all that they needed in this life.